And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan, and she can talk about our sustainability efforts.
Thanks, Deb. So sustainability is not new to Ames or to the City of Ames, and I hope it's not new to you, whether you've lived here a short time or whether you've been here many, many years. But the City of Ames is committed to becoming a more sustainable organization, that we promote conservation and that we encourage renewable energy within our community. And we also have strive and continue to strive to make environmentally sound choices in how we operate, in the equipment we purchase, in the services we provide, and the policies that guide our organization's decision-making. So as I said, for decades, the City of Ames has been committed to reducing our carbon footprint. And I would suggest it's well before we even use words like carbon footprint. Saving natural resources has always made sense, both economically and environmentally. And so the City of Ames has always had those guides and ideals as part of its makeup. Next slide, please. So a little bit about some of the programs that have been with us for many, many years. And as we've talked to before, we hope that some of these are programs that you're participating in or services that you're familiar with. But if not, it's never too late to get involved. So I'll just go around the slide and talk a little bit about some of these programs and services. In the upper left-hand corner is a photograph of the Arnold O. Chatland Resource Recovery Plant that is located on East Lincoln Way. That opened in 1975, so it's been almost 50 years. That was the first municipally owned and operated waste-to-energy facility in the nation, which is something we've had a lot of pride about here in Ames. The plant receives garbage from around Story County. It goes into the plant. It goes through a series of conveyors and magnets. The metals are extracted, and the garbage is sort of chopped up, and the burnable portion is sent over to the power plant, where it is commingled with natural gas and creates electricity for the citizens of Ames. The non-burnable part is chopped up, so it's much smaller, and it is sent to the landfill. But because of the situation and the smaller amount of garbage created, Story County does not have a landfill within the county boundaries. And so that's something that we've always been very proud about. One thing that comes up a lot in my job, and I've been with the city for 17 years, is I get this question a lot: why don't we recycle in Ames? And I moved back to Ames from a community where I had bins, where I separated my glass and my metals and my paper, and it was kind of a surprise. Through this resource recovery process, we do something called single stream recycling. A lot of people are more common with this idea of separation. And so why doesn't Ames recycle sort of became a question that I was repeatedly answering. And it actually, over time, became something that resource recovery looked at a little bit more seriously and looked at non-beneficial waste. So again, we are slicing up and chopping up that garbage and looking for the burnable portions of the garbage. Well, there are some things that don't make good fuel. So that garbage that's transitioned into fuel is called refuse derived fuel. You'll hear it abbreviated as RDF quite frequently. So there are things that don't make good RDF. So on this slide, you'll see at the bottom left is these big yellow dumpsters. Those are glass recycling bins. So for more than a decade, Resource Recovery has sponsored glass recycling. Those big yellow bins are at the Hy-Vee gas stations, Fairway. There's actually more than a dozen of those around Story County, where you can take and return your container glass. That's your pickle jars, your jelly jars, anything that you got at the grocery store that food came in, you can throw it back in those yellow bins when you do your grocery shopping. Glass does not make a good fuel. It is not a good refuse-derived fuel, so we really don't want it in the waste stream. And over the years that this program has been around, tons and tons of glass has been recycled. That has been a really successful program. The only problem is that we live in a very transient community, and we constantly have to share the message. please remember to recycle your glass. And I'm just guessing that there might be people listening today that maybe weren't familiar with this program. So I hope that we've gotten some new converts. Another program that came out of resource recovery is called FWD, or food waste diversion. This is another step, another way that you can help create a better product to commingle with natural gas to produce electricity. This is called, basically a community composting program where people are asked to bring their food waste to the resource recovery plant and drop it in a red bin that is located just outside the doors of the plant and is available 24/7 to drop off your food waste. So it wasn't until I started actually separating out my food waste. I don't compost at home. I've tried. Some people can't compost because they live in an apartment or they don't need the compost. So if you separate your food waste, you would be surprised how much flatter, drier, and loss of volume, how much less weight your garbage actually has. Food waste has a lot of liquid in it. It also is not good to have wet garbage when you're trying to create something burnable. So separating food from the garbage makes a lot of sense. Food waste diversion, since it started, it's only been going a few years, has also avoided several tons of garbage from the landfill. So it's been a successful project. We get a lot of comments on it would be easier if it was curbside. It would be lots of ways it would be easier. But right now, this is the program that we have started with. It was a pilot project, and we are looking to grow it. So that's another one that I hope that if you hadn't heard of before, you can get involved in. Some of the other programs and services the City of Ames offers, SciRide. I think many of you are familiar with our public transit system. It's a shared transit system with Iowa State University. It's been very successful. SciRide will soon be getting 2 battery electric buses. They're scheduled to be delivered earlier this summer. These are clean vehicles funded by the Federal Transit Administration Low or No Emission Grant Program and the Iowa Department of Transportation Volkswagen Settlement. And almost $2 million in grants was received to purchase these 2 buses. They will reduce, obviously, our carbon emissions. They'll control noise pollution, and they'll reduce operating costs of SciRide's bus fleet. So we are learning a lot by adding more and more electrified vehicles into our fleet. If you see in the lower right-hand corner, that is one of our electric cars that we use for our city fleet. We are building infrastructure so we can charge our vehicles, but also we're building public infrastructure so the public can charge its vehicles as well. And then you'll see in the middle at the bottom of the screen, our Sunsmart Ames Community Solar Project. That is a 2 megawatt community solar farm located between Airport Road and Highway 30 near the Ames Municipal Airport. This program allows Ames customers to buy solar panels and receive credit on their electric bills for the energy produced by the solar panels. And it makes clean solar energy more accessible for people who maybe are not able to put it on their own rooftops or live in apartments or for whatever reason are not able to install their own solar. They can still buy into basically a co-op solar farm and still support renewable energy. So those are some of the programs. I obviously couldn't list them all. We have lots and lots of programs pretty much in every department in the city. We have some type of sustainability effort or program. These are some of the more popular ones. And we are continuing to add to those and grow them. So next slide. So I mentioned before about the resource recovery plant, and it is reaching close to its 50-year anniversary. That's a long time for any single operation to keep going and operate the same way that it's operated for so many decades. So we are in the middle of a waste to energy study, and that will kind of determine the future of the resource recovery plant. There are lots of different ways to go and different potential ways to improve and invest in this facility. So one of the other things that we're looking at as we generate this climate action plan, we need to look at the waste to energy study to make sure that we are both on the same page with the ultimate goal and outcome. This waste management hierarchy, this sort of reverse triangle that's on your screen, is from the EPA. And I wanted to point out that if you look at this, this is the waste management hierarchy ranks options according to what is best for the environment. And if you look at energy recovery, which is what our waste energy facility is, you can see that it is getting towards the bottom, which is the least preferred for the environment. It's not at the bottom, but again, we need to look at how we provide programs and services through a big picture. And if you look at what's at the top of this waste hierarchy, it is reduced source reduction and reusing product. So from your own perspective as an Ames citizen, what can we do to reduce waste in the first place so we don't have to find a disposal method or invest time and energy and money into something that if we didn't have to get rid of it in the first place, if we worked on our own personal waste management, maybe that would be a better place to start through reusing and donating items, buying things in bulk, reducing the packaging that we purchase, looking at product redesign, all sorts of ways that we can not have the waste with us in the first place. So lots of big decisions. We have made huge strides in reducing our carbon footprint as an organization and as a community. I wanted to just put in a plug that in 2015, our power plant did convert from a coal power plant to natural gas, which was about a 40% reduction community-wide in carbon. So that was a significant investment. And as we look at things like the waste to energy study, there are those things out there that can make a big impact, and that's part of climate action planning. Next slide. And I think that's my last slide, and I think at this point I hand it over to Mary.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So, heard a lot about what our plan has entailed, the information that we've gathered, and the different programs that we have currently happening in the Ames community. So the real key to a successful climate action plan that involves current generations and certainly impacts all the generations that follow, and to ensure that this climate action plan is relevant, beneficial, thoughtful, and sustainable, is that the community is involved in certainly setting the goals, which we have already put forward, and then in looking really at the strategies, at the opportunities in order to reach those goals, and ensuring that your input is heard. All of you have so many vital and critical and relevant perspectives and experiences that you can share related to what you know best within your businesses, within your households, within different organizations that you serve on in the community, and just even being a resident here in Ames. And so we want to make sure to stress, please get involved. Please let us know the information that we need to provide to you, and please put your input into this plan. It's so very vital. So with that in mind, Deb mentioned that we do have a website specifically devoted to the climate action plan that is listed here on the screen, cityofames.org/sustainability, or certainly just doing a search for sustainability within the search engine on the main cities page. When you do that search for sustainability, you will pop up onto this web page, and then you want to scroll down and click on that large square, that green square that says climate action plan. And within going to that, you will have the opportunity then to find a number of different components. There are all of the documents that we have put together to assist in informing the public about the different components of the plan. We have presentations that have been provided to council workshops as well as to our supplemental input committee meetings. We also have information on just the background about climate action planning, a number of background documents to assist in just understanding, again, what is a climate action plan? What are the different pieces that go about putting that together? We also have quite a robust frequently asked questions section, and we continue to add to that as members of our community bring questions to our attention that we feel are important to share. I would also mention that we have a lot of information about upcoming events, and one that is happening this week is actually a public presentation at the City of Ames Public Library. That's happening on Thursday at 6 p.m. and they do have an online as well as in-person option for that. And so the other thing that I would mention that you'll be seeing on that page upcoming, we're expecting it in the next few days, is a new public survey. And this survey is specifically related to, we have goals currently, and what now? What are the components of us accomplishing those goals? What are the strategies? What are the areas of focus that are important to you? And what are your concerns or your questions as we move forward as well? That survey will focus on that. And also we're challenging you to now is the opportunity for us all to consider our own impact, do a little reflection, not only as a household, but a business, to consider looking at that 83% reduction by 2030. What does that look like for our community? 83% reduction, excuse me. And so next slide, please. There can be questions as a household. I know that my household has sat down and we've had some discussions on how can we look at our decisions, certainly upcoming decisions related to heating and cooling. How can we look at how we make decisions around transportation, and even gathering and talking to our neighbors about opportunities. There are a number of different examples that our consultants have been providing to us and that we will be including in various discussions. And there have been questions that Ames residents have already brought to our attention, have been discussing with city employees of different opportunities that we of course have put into our planning processes as well. Next slide. And then certainly as a business, we have this Smart Business Challenge program that has been a part of our community. A number of discussions have been taking place within our Smart Business Challenge program, even before we start doing climate action planning related to increasing sustainability opportunities. But similarly, as a household, consideration of heating and cooling, considerations of transportation, different opportunities maybe to gather with other businesses, look at opportunities for collaboration, and just to even set within your own business. We know a number of our businesses already have sustainability plans in place. They're looking at those climate action goals as well, but is it now really putting out information for all the business owners and employees to really be able to be tracking their progress? Certainly, Susan mentioned a number of waste opportunities and a number of community programs as well. So now's the time to start strategizing, asking those questions, considering opportunities, and certainly talking to us and asking the questions to us as well. Next slide, as we sort of scroll through this, we do know what climate action change looks like. We've seen pictures around the world, but we have experienced it firsthand in our own community, whether it be high water. Next slide. Oh, could you do the next slide, please, Deb? There we go. Impacting the areas that we recreate in, certainly challenging our electric services and our ability to meet basic amenities. Next slide, Beth. And certainly the aftermath of what a climatic event looks like. But we also know what climate action looks like. And that's what we're excited to put more into our community and have more of these images come up in our future, whether it be electric vehicle charging stations. Next slide. Rummage Rampage, hopefully most of you have heard of that event, but each year tons and tons of material kept out of the landfill. Multiple thousands of dollars raised for nonprofit organizations, and just a really great opportunity to reconsider waste. And as Susan mentioned, being at the top of that waste hierarchy rather than closer to the bottom. Next slide. We also have seen our community come together, whether it's planting trees and increasing that carbon sequestration opportunity, or just beautifying, having that pride in ensuring that sustainability really is forefront and is a message to all of our community. And next slide. And this is exactly what the food waste drop-off looks like. I know it's close to lunch, but the important thing from this picture is that all of that otherwise would have been landfilled. And instead it's being made into beautiful compost to have a beneficial use. And I actually just dropped off my own compost this weekend. So this is something that we're also very proud of, is those materials otherwise that would be landfilled are being made available for beneficial use for our community. And next slide. So with that in mind, please again, get involved, ask us questions. Deb is our primary project team representative for the City of Ames, and with my shared position, I am that conduit with Iowa State University. Both of our email and contact information is here, but I would also say that we have created a specific email for the entire project team for the Climate Action Plan. By emailing sustainability@cityofames.org, email will go to all of us. We will ensure to get you an answer or to get you connected to the answer that most effectively will provide you with that information and awareness. And just as we're doing today for you Rotarians, if you are involved in other organizations or maybe want to get a group of businesses together, or perhaps just maybe bringing together a few neighborhoods to hear the same presentation and be able to ask similar questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we are encouraging the opportunity to speak to as many organizations as we possibly can. And next slide. And with that in mind, we thank you for this opportunity. If we have time, we're very happy to answer questions, but again, certainly at any time, please don't hesitate to email us, sustainability@cityofames.org.
All right, so we've got several questions in the chat. So I'm going to go back. We've had a couple people who were praising Cyride, it being a great community asset. Barbara Wood said she's recycling and food waste diversion. Those are great programs. Warren is asking the status of can and bottle recycling in Ames. I'm aware that the Hy-Vee gas stations have a kind of a side area where you can drop off your cans in bottles. I think Fairway's still taking those as well, but if somebody knows different, please speak up.
Deb, I can jump in and say I'm not sure. Fairway for a while was not taking them. I know Hy-Vee is taking them. Hy-Vee does have some information related to limiting the number at one time. So you just might want to be aware next time you're shopping at Hy-Vee just to read those signs on the Redemption Center doors.
We've got a question. It seems that the percentage of electricity generated by RDF is much less than it used to be. That's a question.
So this is Don. I've left my camera off trying to save bandwidth, but I'm sitting here in my car. So really what happens with refuse-derived fuel is by the permits that we have to burn it in a ratio of weight. So in other words, it's one fuel versus another. And with natural gas, as you can imagine, it doesn't weigh as much as coal used to. So when you look at the overall energy that is being produced, and Ames as a community uses a lot of energy, it does only put out about 2 to 3 to 4% of our overall energy. So it is small, but it still is, it's helpful because we're burning less natural gas. We're using less of the market energy. And as you can imagine, RDF or trash is somewhat renewable. We can't seem to get rid of it like we'd like to. Does that answer the question?
Well, Don, I would add that we have had some maintenance, and so the overall energy production may be a little bit less, but it does fluctuate a bit with the different kinds of maintenance we're doing, planned and unplanned at the power plant.
Yes, thanks.
That's true.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the question. Next question, I'm never sure what to do with cooking oil and grease. Does Ames have a collection program? So I will encourage everyone, please do not dispose of it down your drain. That is probably the worst thing that you can do. At this point in time, there isn't a separate program to collect that. And I think we are careful about it as far as the including it in the food waste diversion bucket. But Susan, can you speak to that a little bit more?
So for large quantities of cooking oil, like you might be frying a turkey, you can bring those back to resource recovery, those big gallon kinds of grease, and they will take that back. Your smaller amounts of grease, you made some bacon, let it solidify, throw it in your garbage, that will be fine. It is not, it doesn't actually go in our compost bin right now. At this point, there are some things you can't put in the composting, like bones and the fats and the greases, but small quantities of grease in the garbage is okay.
Okay, next question. What targets are the hardest to hit or decrease? Mary, you want to help us with that one?
Well, I think they all have challenges, certainly. And so related to I guess what I would initially say is, yes, they all do have challenges. And so to that end, we've been talking to our consultants a lot about, and one of the first things that our consultants will say to any community that is setting goals and looking at considerable reductions is to look at how efficient the system can become, even before conversion begins. Having the most efficient, the leanest system ensures that the infrastructure then does not have a considerable leap, if you will, as you're switching over. That will ensure the most economic and almost in general, and also in general, being able to effectively meet that additional capacity that is going to have to be there. If we're looking at, and we are certainly moving away from any sources of fossil fuel, that all goes into our electrical system. And that means that we have to have that much more capacity on our electrical system than we do currently. So the consideration of how we can ensure we have the least amount of additional demand or even reduced demand, that just allows us to ensure the most effectiveness in transitioning. I would say that, as we look at other components, many of them are going to be those more challenging discussions that we have with ourselves. Doing something in your household as easy as a trash audit, I think, is very eye-opening to just challenge all of us. What exactly are we throwing away? And what are some other options of looking at the amount of trash we reduce? And then just planning our traveling a little differently to ensure that when we do need to drive, and certainly there are those occasions, that maybe we can collect a number of things all at one time and adjust our demand that way. But I would say, and Dawn, if you want to jump in here, one of the things we're really looking at right now is just that consideration of our capacity.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Yeah. From an electrical standpoint, from a grid standpoint, we're actually doing quite well. One of the things that we're starting to look at are the wires large enough going into homes? Are the wires large enough going into substations and things like that? And to be honest, the design of the system is done is actually doing quite well. If we can avoid hitting new peaks, we can delay the need to build new generation, and that's where a lot of the costs come in. I think a different way to look at that question, though, and it was talked about early on in the presentation, is that everyone has a role in this. So the city itself is going to be doing a lot: the electric utility, water utility, public works. But to me, I think one of the more difficult things is going to be the average homeowner, the average consumer, because what has to be done long term to meet these goals is the conversion away from burning fossil fuels. That means different ways of heating and cooling your home. Furnaces are old school, and it's not that it has to be done today or tomorrow. It's something that maybe the next time an air conditioner or furnace needs to be replaced, look at ground source heat pumps, look at air-to-air heat exchangers that don't burn fossil fuels. And it's going to be those individual decisions and change outs in buildings and homes and things like that that are really going to make the difference. Electric vehicles. I'm sitting right now driving an internal combustion engine, and I'm saying, okay, when this thing quits, I'm going to buy an electric vehicle because that will make a big difference. Things like that.
Okay, thanks, Mary and Don. Our next question was, how many semi-loads are taken to the landfill each day, and where's that location? Susan provided a response. We contract with the Boone County landfill, and I think it's important to point out that all of Story County's garbage goes to the Boone. We use the Boone County landfill, so it's all of the communities within the county as well as Iowa State, and it comes to the resource recovery plant first. We do the sorting of what can be burned, and then what's left over is taken to the Boone County landfill. So that's the location. We're not sure of that daily number of trips, but we will look into that and get that information provided to you.
And Deb, this is Don. Let me give a little clarification. I believe there are 2 small communities within Story County that actually truck theirs down to Metro Waste.
Oh,
down
okay.
in Bondurant. I can't remember which 2. I want to say, I can't remember the 2 small communities that do that. That just happens to be closer for them.
Okay.
And they've chosen not to be part of the resource recovery program.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see. Trying to get to the next question here. Does the city provide a receptacle for food waste diversion, and is there a charge and container for in-home collection? Susan?
Sure, I'd love to talk. I could talk about food waste diversion forever. The program has morphed from its initial pilot project, and now I would tell you that you can purchase a bucket from the City of Ames, but you don't have to. You just need to collect your food waste, and if you're using a bag, you just need it to be a compostable bag. And so a lot of people simply, depending on the amount of food waste, collect it in an ice cream bin or a kitty litter bin, and then they just take it when that bin is full down to resource recovery and dump it into the red food waste diversion receptacle. So you don't need to buy anything special. You can buy our green buckets, and they're kind of handy in that on the lid, they say what you can put in and what you shouldn't put in. So and they come with compostable bags. You can get a starter kit right here at City Hall at the community center. They're $10, or just use whatever it is you have. So.
Okay, great question. Mary, the next question is for you. Can you discuss student government's input on the Climate Action Plan membership and the plan itself?
Yes, I did provide a response in the chat as well. And so I I can briefly sort of review that, but certainly if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And Elizabeth, I want to make sure that I have effectively answered your question, but in general, we have student representatives on the Supplemental Input Committee, and those student representatives, one was designated specifically by student government, that is their sustainability director. The other ones, there were 3 specific positions on the committee that were designated for Iowa State students. Iowa State students applied, as did the other representatives on that committee. Through the application process, then the mayor chose those committee members. Our students have been, I think, very much a resource for Iowa State students in general. They just completed a town hall meeting on February 7th to specifically gain that input and those concerns and considerations, as well as aspirations from our student body.
And I'd note too, as in addition to having Iowa State students on our supplemental input committee, we also have high school students. There is a group within the Ames High School that is interested in climate action and has some initiatives going on there. So we wanted to make sure and include their voices as well. We have comments in here too that Walmart is doing can recycling. So going back to the question that was asked earlier. Next question, do you promote the use of ethanol and biodiesel as much as electric vehicles or some sort of equitable manner? So.
Don, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. So we do support that in terms of, I know we're looking at that and use that in the term of public works vehicles and things like that. We do use it in the summer in our electric vehicles where we look at the higher ethanol blends. And we've also looked at it from a biodiesel specifically standpoint. Part of the challenges that we have is in the wintertime today, it does not function as well, and it tends to not work as well in our vehicles in the wintertime, I guess is what I'd look at. But definitely, I know I've had several conversations with people at REG, and they've got an excellent product there. And we're very interested as they continue to improve the products that they're producing. We'll continue to look at those as an option in vehicles going forward.
Thanks, Don. And this next question is probably for you as well, Don. It has to do with the solar farm. How is the solar farm doing, and what is the status of individual residential properties installing their own solar cells in the city, purchasing excess power that they could produce?
Oh, very good. So we have a 2 megawatt solar farm, as we talked about earlier, down at the airport. Right now, about 80% of the solar farm is spoken for. So there's still about 20% that remains for individuals or businesses that would like to buy power packs. That's not to say that the energy is being wasted. The city itself then purchases that excess until it's sold to somebody else, and we blend that in with the other generation. It's operating well. I personally would like to see the panels washed a little bit more often. We need some rain, and I think that would even improve the output a little bit. In terms of individual solar panels, we have 155 systems owned by our residential and commercial customers out on the system. Lyndon, so there's an interesting process that we go through. So Lyndon Cook, who's our manager of engineering, he goes out and inspects them before they get turned on to make sure that they're safe. Inspections also takes a look at them. And I believe planning and housing looks at it from an aesthetics standpoint to make sure, like in Old Town, how they appear from that standpoint. I believe there are about 7 or 8 projects in the queue right now, meaning that they're anywhere from talking to us about installing solar or getting near the point where they're getting that final inspection and turned on. So we should have close to about 165 by the end of the year. I think you mentioned, Deb, the excess. So when the solar panels produce more energy than is used by the customer and where it sits, The city will purchase that energy, and it's at a cost above what you would pay for the energy portion of your electric rates. So I want to be kind of clear on that. So it works out to 6-7 cents a kilowatt hour that we purchase the excess for. Does that answer the question?
I believe so. Thanks, Don. We have a comment to share, and it's stating that it's easy to deposit glass in the receptacles when at the grocery store, but if you're making a special trip to do that by driving, it might be counterproductive. And yes, we talk about those kinds of things all the time. We have these small initiatives, but yet, and we know we're not in a perfect world yet, but I think it's helping people get into the habit of doing that type of thing, thinking about it, and hopefully here in the near future, as more EVs become available and we can start replacing those with existing vehicles, or even using more active transportation, walking to a location to dispose of things, just thinking a little bit differently about how we're making those trips and what we're doing with our waste. I think we'll get there in small steps.
So
Susan?
Deb, if I could add,
Yeah.
you know, the idea of a curbside recycling program, that comes up a lot. The city is not in a position to offer that product. We don't do trash hauling now. So what we are studying is, it's been brought up that there's a lot of private trash haulers already, 6, 7, 8 different companies currently driving city streets. And so adding a curbside opportunity for food composting, you know, might not be the best addition to the mix. And I would say, having done food waste diversion now for almost 2 years, if you look at where the resource recovery plant is located, just a little bit east of downtown, and the fact that right now in the winter, you can keep your food bin outside for a long time before you have to actually dump it. You just have to be more cognizant of the next time you're going to the library, to downtown, to scooters, to Banjo Park, to the post office, to a gas station. All of those are very, very close to our resource recovery plant. It's just a matter of being a little more thoughtful in grouping your, as Mary was saying, you know, grouping your outings together, and you'll find, hey, you're not too far away from resource recovery and you can just drop that food waste off. And if you can't get there this week, maybe next week it'll work for you. So I think it's for all of us to be a little bit more thoughtful about how do we use energy, especially non-renewable resources, and how do we maximize it?
I know we're getting through questions, but this is Jeff. That was one of the things I was hoping we'd hear today, and that is some low-hanging campaign opportunity that could raise community awareness, participation, excitement. So I would hope that as the plan evolves, that we would think about some campaigns. That's why I asked the question about some low targets, something that would get all of us thinking differently, acting differently, and participating. So appreciate this whole conversation.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Thanks for that, Jeff.
This is Jim Patton. We have a number of our Rotary members interested in tree planting. Do you know, is there anything being planned for the spring?
I am not aware of a date or anything that's been set. I've participated in that, and we did that. I know last fall was the last scheduled event. Susan, do you know?
All I know is that our forester Paltaki is extremely aggressive about getting grants and using volunteers for tree planting. So I will make sure to let him know that Rotary is involved. So when that opportunity comes up, he can get word to you.
Thank you very much. You can use me as your contact person if you like.
I will absolutely do that, Jim. Thanks.
One thing that I would bring up that we actually, in speaking to another group, we had a number of individuals share their experiences and already starting to make some different conversions and different choices. Some individuals had already purchased electric vehicles, had already had some discussions about switching out some HVAC systems. And we were so excited to hear that. And so what we would encourage you all to do, as you may have those stories or you may have those experiences or the firsthand testimonial, to drop an email to that sustainability@cityofames.org, because we would really like to gather those testimonials and those examples to be able to share community member to community member. To really allow us all to have different ideas and different perspectives and to be encouraged by each other.
Mary, is the use of plastic bags and straws being considered in Ames? There are a number of communities have gone through those conversations. I know the pandemic paused some of that, but there are an awful lot of plastic bags that come out of the grocery stores these days.
Yes, that's a great question. We have had, particularly our high school students have been very engaged in looking at the opportunity for a voluntary consideration of not using as many bags or having a potential so many cents off if individuals would bring their reusable bags to stores. I will say that in the state of Iowa, we do have a ban against banning plastic bags. So it's not something that we can do at that level. But I think the more, and that's a great opportunity for that sort of kitchen table discussion of families, oh my goodness, or, bringing all of your grocery bags and putting them on the table and saying, oh my gosh, do we really need all these plastic bags? And what are we going to do with them? But that's a great question, Warren. And related to straws, I think we've seen more and more, the pandemic certainly had an impact on that, and plastic bags. But I think we've seen more and more businesses, again, in that voluntary consideration, asking if straws are needed or wanted before necessarily initially providing them. But I think that's a great, some of those low hanging fruit pieces that we can start putting forward and offering. So thank you for bringing it up.
And working with the pet community, that those bags are actually too big for picking up pet poop.
Depends upon the size of the dog, Jeff.
Or if you need to double bag it. Other questions or comments? This has been a great conversation. We sure appreciate everybody tuning in, and if you've missed any of the supplemental input committee meetings or the steering committee meetings, you can go to that climate action plan site, and they're all recorded, so you can catch up that way if you'd like. Again, our next supplemental input committee meeting is this Wednesday, the 23rd at 6 p.m. in council chambers. And then the next steering committee meeting is April 5th, starting at 6 p.m. and that will be in the council chambers as well. And in the meantime, we'll be pushing out this survey and working on some focus groups so we can get more community input. So any questions, please feel free to reach out to each of us individually or using that sustainability@cityofames.org email, and we will be in touch with you. And I'll turn this back over to Kent. Or Kelsey.
Thank you. That was, due just to the comments and all of the questions, that was super beneficial for all of us. And I think we all can admit that we could all be a little bit better on waste and trying to recycle a little bit better. And yes, definitely bringing reusable bags to the grocery store is very smart. It's maybe you just leave them in your car and then you won't forget them. But nonetheless, thank you so much for your presentation. It was so beneficial. We all learned so much. We really appreciate it. Next week, we are online again. We will be, Kevin Foley with the Des Moines International Airport will be with us. And Kent, I'm so excited about that one. That'll be very interesting. And then the following week, we are back in person, but we are not at the Alumni Center. We're actually on stage at CY Stevens. So that'll be special too. So looking forward to next week and the week following. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and end with the 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you back online next week.